Hello, my name is Tracy Longden-Thurgood, and for those of you who don't know me, I am currently the module lead supporting your students through their work-based learning portfolio. And this recording is just going to give you a reminder of the contents of the work-based portfolio, and more importantly, give you a bit of a flavour of how you go about marking it towards the end of the student's academic year. So the academic timetable is coming towards an end. We're now sitting in April, and the actual submission date for this portfolio is the 3rd of July. And that's right at the very end of their placement for this second year. Now, in terms of your marking, we ask you to just get your marking grid into the student just the Friday before they are due to submit. So in terms of your time frame, we're looking for you to submit to them on the 26th of June. So they should have all of this work that I'm going to go through in a moment, all done and dusted by that Friday. That will give you that opportunity to have a look at their work and then make that final judgment in terms of their grade. You then pass the marking grid to them, and then they can submit it on that 3rd of July without any penalty in terms of the grade being offered. Now, throughout their placement with you, your student has been working on their portfolio tasks, and you can see on the screen that for year 2 there are 12 individual pieces of work that they need to be completing. You will have been supporting them throughout the academic year to get these pieces of work done, and many of you and your colleagues may have also done their observations. But if they still have bits of work to do at this stage, then please do support them so that all of those 12 pieces are ready for you to grade at the end of that placement period. Now, within the university, we use a piece of software called Mahara, which is basically an online digital portfolio. And so every one of those 12 tasks that your student will be completing, they should be uploading into this safe depository Mahara portfolio, ready for you to access and grade. Now, some students and practice educators prefer to do the marking offline, and that is absolutely fine. So if there is a confidential shared space on a local organisational shared drive, then by all means you can access the students' work that way. But please do encourage your students to send me access to their portfolio so I can just check that their Mahara has been uploaded correctly before they submit, if you're not going in to do that check yourself. On the screen here, you can see what the online Mahara portfolio looks like. So as well as the paper copy of instructions for each task that your student will have, there are also the digital duplication of those instructions. So the example that you can see here on the screen are the instructions for the personal development plan, which is task 1, and you can see then on the left of the screen that the student example here has uploaded the copy of their Word document personal development plan. Now, again, ideally, you will be seeing these pieces of work throughout the academic year, and it's not all of a sudden your student's going to hand it to you right at the very end of their last placement. However, it's still really important that you are checking that all of these instructions have been completed for each of the tasks, so that when the student does submit, we are very confident that you are confident in the work that they have produced. Each of the 12 tasks have been chosen very carefully to align with the Good Scientific Practice standards. These are the overarching standards that enable registration as a healthcare science practitioner when the students graduate by the end of their 3rd year. So within the 2nd year, we are expecting them to do some but not all of the individual criteria within the set of standards. But we still do expect them to demonstrate elements of it. And I'll explain a little bit about that as we go through. So, for example, although the tasks have been chosen to align with Good Scientific Practice standards, the actual level that we're asking you to grade them at is level 5 for the 2nd year of their academic course. Now, what we are looking for you to judge them on is around their ability to carry out complex techniques, particularly for level 1, for year 1 and year 2 tasks. They should be able to recognise pathology at this stage. They know what normal function looks like, but they should also now start to understand what abnormal looks like as well. And particularly in relation to their scope of practice, know when to escalate some pathology onto a more senior member of staff within the team. And that will really demonstrate, therefore, their professionalism within those good scientific practice domains in terms of communication, person-centred care, team working and leadership. So when you're marking, we're not asking you to mark the individual tasks that the learner has completed, but rather we're asking you to make a judgment against those good scientific practice standard criteria. So on the screen here you can see the marking grid for this academic year. And this has actually changed for those of you who marked the students in the first year. You'll see that this is a little bit more simplified in comparison to previous year's grids. Basically, what this is showing you is you've got your domains and the criteria down the left-hand side. And then we would ask you to make a judgment purely with a tick in the box about whether or not you feel they have failed, or whether or not you feel that they are a first or more outstanding student within practice. There are these indicators of excellence which really sort of help determine what it is that you're looking for in practice, but ultimately you're making the judgment against the core skill. Now, this is just one of the domains. This is the professional practice domain, and you'll see when I send you over the actual paperwork that there will be an additional table for domain 2, 3, 4 and 5. Some of them are shorter, as you can see here. The domain 3, clinical practice, has only got the 4 criteria there in comparison to professional practice, which is a slightly longer one. Now, the easiest way to do the marking is to always assume that your student is starting as a 2-1 level student. So in other words, a sort of 60% student. And I, in my head, always think, okay, they're 65. That's the middle of the range. Now, if they've done more than expected, you would be pushing it up towards the sort of 70 and above. If they are working less than that expectation, then you would be pushing them further down. It doesn't have to be a precise science. It is very much to give the student a flavour about where they are. Remember, this is a development portfolio, and as long as they are achieving 40% or above, then they will pass overall. But because you're going to give them feedback at the end of this second year, it's going to help them develop even further in the third year. So be really honest with your grade when you're marking them. But I recommend you start at around about 65, so this sort of column here for the 2-1, and then either go up or down depending on whether or not you think they are doing above that standard or lower than that standard. And then when you give them the overarching grade, it's the average of all of the domains in one figure. So at the very end of the actual marking grid, you will find that there is a space for you to determine overall what the student's grade is based on where the majority of the ticks are throughout that marking grid. In order for them to pass, as I mentioned just now, we are looking for them to have a minimum of 40%. So we're hoping that they will be fitting in this sufficient area or above. And if they are less than sufficient, then you would have had a conversation with the personal tutor during your reviews with that member of the academic team here at the university in advance. So once you've made your overarching decision, you then can give the students some feedback. So the overall performance is how are they achieving in the workplace in terms of those 5 domains. You don't need to do War and Peace, literally a couple of sentences to highlight their strengths in the workplace, but then also their area of development. And then in terms of feed forward, think about what you want them to focus on as they come back to you in the third year. What is that one thing that's going to shift them to that next grade boundary? And this third box you can leave blank. That is the box that your student will then complete. It will give them a chance to have a look at your grade and reflect on your feedback just before they start to put together their third year personal development plans. That brings me to the end of this information session on how you do the portfolio marking. And by all means, if you do have any additional questions, you can reach back out to me. I'm going to send you an email with obviously this training on it and a written guide with the marking grid as well, just so that you've got it all in one place, so you can just come back to me at any point. Alternatively, please ask your personal tutors as well during your one-to-ones with them if you do have any questions around the marking of this portfolio. All of the academics here are fully au fait with what's required. Now, just a reminder and a plea really on behalf of your students with regards to the actual date of when you're doing your marking by, and that is Friday the 26th of June. And if you can get that grid to them, they will have then time to do that self-reflection and ready to upload that grid into their Mahara so they can submit it by their deadline, which is the 3rd of July. If for whatever reason you're not able to make this particular deadline, it may be that your student hasn't got the work to you in time or you're on holiday, then please again just come back to me, because we will need to adjust the student's submission date accordingly so they don't have an automatic fail for not submitting. So on that note, I'll love you and leave you. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck with your marking.